On the day of our engagement, my fiancé, Lionel Benny, was late and didn't show up. I stood alone on the stage, facing the ridicule and mockery from the audience. After the Benny family left, my father's face turned pale with anger, and he scolded me loudly. "You go out and kneel down. Keep kneeling until the Benny family's anger subsides. If this affects our cooperation with the Benny group, I'll skin you alive." Seeing that I didn't move, my father coldly said, "If you don't obey, I'll cut off your mother's medical expenses." I could only resign myself and walk out. Outside, heavy rain poured down, and I knelt in the yard, drenched and embarrassed. The grandstand not far away was filled with people, and some even took out their phones and aimed them at me. It was Harry, a childhood friend of Lionel Benny. He showed me the screen of his phone, where there was a video of Lionel Benny leaning on a couch, with a hot-looking woman in his arms. Lionel's casual voice came through. Although Ella appears thin, her figure is actually quite well endowed. As soon as he said that, everyone burst into laughter. Large raindrops fell relentlessly, and in my blurred vision, I suddenly saw a pair of black leather shoes. I lifted my head, and suddenly met a pair of deep, ink-like eyes. Artie Henderson, Lionel Benny's best friend. He furrowed his brow, and sheltered me under his umbrella. The surroundings fell silent, and Harry looked at us eagerly, his eyes filled with anticipation. I knew he was waiting for the humiliation that Artie Henderson was about to bring me. But Artie Henderson just crouched down, leaning closer to me, and whispered softly, "If you just want to climb up the social ladder, why not choose me?" His voice was low, and even Harry strained his ears, but couldn't hear. Only I was thrown into chaos by his words. This farce ended with Artie Henderson taking me away. I was brought to Artie's private residence. Upon entering, he suddenly leaned over, startling me. With a light laughter, he firmly held my waist, pulling me into his arms. Then a dry towel was placed over my head. His movements were gentle, wiping my damp hair for me, until his fingers pinched my earlobe. His breath instantly became heavy, and the hand resting on my neck slid down my spine to the side of my waist. Then his eyes dimmed, drawing me closer. The intense sound of his heartbeat echoed against our pressed bodies, and I felt a bit afraid of him. According to Lionel, the power of the Henderson family was beyond reach, even for the wealthy. The first time I saw Artie Henderson, he warned me. "Lionel doesn't like women as obedient as you. Don't waste your time on him," he said in a cold and stern voice, his brow furrowed, as if he was extremely annoyed with me. Since then, I started to revolve around Artie Henderson. Perhaps my avoidance was too obvious, even Lionel became a little curious. "Ella, are you afraid of Artie?" Lionel, who is always carefree, asked, without avoiding Artie Henderson. I lowered my head, but I could still feel Artie Henderson's sharp gaze fixed on me. "Why are you afraid of me?" Artie Henderson's voice was hoarse, bringing me back from distant memories. His breath was scorching, spraying against my ear. His fingers, rough with calluses, caressed the back of my neck. Seeing that I didn't respond for a long time, he punished me by taking my earlobe into his mouth. "Speak." The outside of the window was pitch black, like the perfect place for a corpse to be dumped on TV drama. My body trembled slightly from nervousness, and my voice had a hint of crying as I nervously replied, I'm not afraid." Unexpectedly, this answer didn't satisfy Artie Henderson. His already heavy breathing became even clearer, and the large hand gripping my waist moved further down. Just then, the phone rang. Artie paused his actions, impatiently took out his phone, and answered the call. "Artie," Lionel's voice came through along with noisy music. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but I could hear a hint of nervousness in his voice. "I heard from Harry that Ella is with you," Lionel said. Artie played with my long hair with his fingers and replied softly, "Yes." Lionel instantly relaxed his voice and said cheerfully, "Thanks for today. Consider it a favor owed to you." Artie didn't say anything, but Lionel didn't mind. He continued talking to himself. "Ella is timid and always cries a lot. Don't scare her away from me." Artie chuckled lightly, using his free hand to lift my chin, his thumb pressing against my lips, rubbing firmly. "When you ran away from the wedding, why didn't you think that she cries a lot?" Artie said. "But now you remember? Are you afraid of me?" He seemed to be asking Lionel, but also asking me. What is there to be afraid of? His fingers forcefully entered my mouth, and the possessive meaning in his eyes grew stronger. I had no way to retreat, tears welled up in the corners of my eyes. Just then, the call was hung up, and Artie's fingers withdrew. Before I could catch my breath, an intense and irresistible kiss came crashing down. "You're not allowed to be afraid of me." He raised an eyebrow, coaxing me in my ear like a satisfied beast. "Ella, my baby, and come sit a little closer." My marriage with Lionel Benny was cancelled by my father. Unexpectedly, Lionel was the first to disagree. "I just didn't attend the engagement banquet, it's not a big deal," he arrogantly said. "As compensation, I'll give you the land in the west of the city." Since meeting Artie, my father no longer looks favorably upon the Benny family, but he still needs to maintain a decent facade. It's Ella's misfortune. I believe Mr. Benny is not lacking beautiful women by your side, and you don't lack someone like Ella. Lionel Benny couldn't tolerate such humiliation, so he stormed off, without any gratitude. My marriage with Lionel Benny was originally a result of my father's relentless pursuit. People in high society laugh at the fact that the Weber family climbed up the social ladder by selling their daughters. But my father didn't care. He brought me back to the Weber family, paid for my college education, and covered my mother's huge medical expenses. For all of this, he only asked one thing of me: get Lionel Benny to agree to this marriage. It took me 2 whole years to finally get Lionel Benny's consent. And now, everything is over. After that day, I lived a few peaceful days. I no longer had to deal with Lionel Benny, and Artie Henderson seemed to have disappeared from the face of the earth. When I went to see my mother, she had just finished her dialysis session. Her face was pale with no trace of color. She looked at me for a long time, then asked, "Have you lost weight recently?" Before I could answer, she asked again, "Have you been getting closer to Lionel Benny recently?" I shook my head and said, "Our marriage has been cancelled." My mother sighed deeply. "Your father is too pragmatic, but he's doing it for your own good. Don't go against him. Okay?" I nodded reluctantly, feeling like a lump in my throat, unable to speak. At that moment, my phone rang at an inappropriate time, and the name Artie Henderson appeared before my eyes. I was stunned for a while, remembering the night when Artie Henderson wrote down his phone number with my hand in his. "Call me if you need anything." His chin rested on my shoulder, and his fingers, with distinct joints, played with my hand. "Don't you dare not answer my calls." As if in a dream, I could only nod dumbly. As if punishing me for not being attentive enough, he gently bit my already reddened earlobe. "No distractions. Why is your face so red, Ella?" My mother lightly patted my hand and looked at me strangely. "Aren't you going to answer the phone?" Only then did I snap out of it and hurriedly replied, "I answered it." After half a month, hearing Artie Henderson's voice still made my face burn. He sounded hoarse, as if he had just woken up. "What are you doing?" I clenched my phone and whispered, "I'm at the hospital with my mother." There was a shallow response on the other end, followed by rustling sounds, as if he was getting dressed. After a while, Artie Henderson spoke again, "I'm sending someone to pick you up." "Pick me up?" Memories of that rainy night and the passionate embrace flooded back, something I had deliberately forgotten. I murmured, "Why are you picking me up?" He chuckled on the other end, then deliberately lowered his voice. "Of course, to do something that makes me happy." That day, Artie didn't cross any boundaries, but what he did was even more difficult for me to talk about than crossing boundaries. When I got into the car sent by Artie, someone suddenly hugged me from behind. "You've become thinner." Artie Henderson, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, looked a bit haggard. He rested his chin on my shoulder and spoke in a very gentle tone. "You must not have been eating properly. Why did you come?" I tried to relax my body, afraid that any stiffness would make him angry. "Didn't you say you sent someone to pick me up?" He buried his face in the side of my neck and took a deep breath. "I couldn't wait to see you." Artie took me to the hotel of his family. I remembered that place. A long time ago, Lionel Benny had brought me here too. At that time, Lionel still didn't have a good attitude towards me, but at least he didn't ignore me. But that time couldn't be considered a pleasant memory. Harry loved to stir up trouble, and a few words attracted the attention of the girls who secretly loved Lionel Benny at the gathering. When Lionel went out to answer a phone call, they pushed me and I accidentally knocked over the table with expensive red wine. When Lionel came back, he didn't ask anything. He grabbed my wrist and took me out of the room. His face was dark all the way, and it wasn't until we reached the door that he disdainfully said to me, "Can you behave?" Why do you always make things so bad? I panicked and tried to explain, it wasn't me. Before I could finish my sentence, Lionel interrupted directly. You need to have some awareness when you throw a tantrum. Do you know how expensive those wines were? Can you afford to compensate for them? His words left me pale, and my lips trembled, but I didn't say anything else. He looked at me, probably realizing that he had gone too far with his words. He sighed heavily, then rubbed his temples forcefully, looking like he had a headache that was about to explode. You can go back now. Don't wander around in front of me. After that day, I fell seriously ill. When I saw Lionel again, he acted as if he had forgotten what happened that day and casually asked why I hadn't been going to college. But in reality, if he cared about me, he could easily have noticed that I was on sick leave. So, he was just politely asking after all. Perhaps my face was too pale. Artie Henderson instantly noticed that something was wrong. He held my hand, leaned down slightly, and asked, "Are you feeling unwell?" I shook my head and said, "I'm fine." After we sat down, Artie kept putting food into my bowl and didn't eat anything himself. He just stared at me. His intense gaze made me uneasy. After hesitating for a while, I finally spoke up. "Could you stop looking at me?" He raised an eyebrow and asked with interest, "Are you shy?" I didn't answer him, and he didn't seem annoyed. He leisurely took out a handkerchief from his pocket. The soft touch of the handkerchief wiped the corners of my mouth, and Artie's face appeared magnified in front of me. This was an extremely intimate gesture that scared me so much that I couldn't even speak. Even the previous intimate skin contact happened in a dim environment. Unlike now, where everything was well lit, and every small expression and movement were clearly visible. At that moment, the door was pushed open, and a group of people barged in. Leading the way was Harry, followed closely by Lionel Benny, who I hadn't seen in a long time. The laughter instantly disappeared, and everyone stared at Artie and me in astonishment. Harry was the first to break the strange silence. "Artie, why don't you tell us that you have returned to the country?" While speaking, Harry stole a few glances at me. "If I'm not mistaken, this should be Ella Weber, right?" Artie didn't stop his actions. He gently wiped the stain off the corner of my mouth, then leaned back in his chair and responded softly. Lionel's face had turned as dark as a pot. He pushed Harry aside and questioned me. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" "What is there to say?" Suddenly, Artie grabbed my hand and spoke before me. "The news of Lionel's runaway marriage is widely known in the capital city." Lionel's eyes were burning with anger, but he kept staring at me. "I'm asking you." For some reason, even though the situation was tense, I had never felt as calm as I did at this moment. "Our marriage was cancelled a month ago." I looked up and met Lionel's gaze. "The Benny family agreed to it as well. So you couldn't wait to find a new partner for yourself?" Lionel was furious, and his words became more and more offensive. "I thought you were different from your snobbish father." After saying this, he turned to look at Artie. "Artie, there are so many women you can choose from. Why did you have to steal mine?" "Lionel, you two have no relationship anymore." Artie's voice was calm, but everyone present knew that he was angry. "She's not yours. So how could you said that I steal her?" With that, Artie stood up, clearly showing his intention to drive Lionel away. Lionel was dragged away by someone, and Harry quickly stepped forward to defuse the situation. Artie impatiently furrowed his brows, and Harry politely left. The noisy private room returned to silence, with Artie leaning back in his chair, lost in thought. I couldn't eat anymore, so I spoke up to leave. Artie looked at me for a while and then stood up, grabbing his coat and walking out. He walked quickly, and I followed behind him, trying hard to catch up, just like I used to chase after Lionel. But just as the distance between us grew, my footsteps gradually slowed down. However, at that moment, Artie stopped in his tracks. "Sorry," he looked down at me with lowered eyes. I lost control. I nodded understandingly and said, "It's all right." For someone as proud as Artie Henderson, perhaps this was the first time he had received such sarcasm. His gaze lingered for a long time. A cool breeze blew, lifting the hair on his forehead, and I unexpectedly felt a pang of sympathy. After a long while, his large palm held mine, and his fingers interlocked with mine, refusing to let go. "It won't happen again." Before getting off the car, I sincerely apologized to Artie Henderson. In the dimly lit carriage, Artie couldn't help but laugh at my serious expression. "Do you think I'm angry with you?" I nodded. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have been publicly mocked by Lionel Benny. This has nothing to do with you. I started to say, but Artie's kiss interrupted me. He kissed me forcefully, almost taking away all the air from my mouth. I wanted to escape, but he held the back of my head firmly, and the driver in front raised the partition. In this narrow space, all I could hear was the sound of our lips touching. After the long kiss ended, he lowered his gaze and wiped away the moisture from the corner of my mouth. Ella, he called my name softly, seemingly helpless. Have you never passed a reading comprehension test before? In matters of love, I am a bit slow. When I was young, I relied on my mother. They said my mother was unmarried and pregnant, which was shameless. As I grew up, I chased after Lionel Benny all the way. Even if he publicly ridiculed me, I didn't mind. It's not good to be too sensitive. I nodded, trying to reply. But my tongue felt numb and I could only make vague sounds. I have good grades, I managed to say. Artie suddenly burst into laughter. He touched my cheek and kissed me gently again. It was just a light kiss, but it made me more flustered than any previous ones. Yeah, he smiled, his eyes showing a playful expression, as if he was coaxing a child. Ella, you're the smartest. It was only when Artie's car disappeared from sight that I turned to prepare to enter the house. As I opened the door, a hand appeared in front of me, and then the heavy iron door slammed shut. Lionel Benny's voice came from behind me. He asked, "Are you happy?" Lionel must have been drinking a lot, as his tongue couldn't speak straight. I knew I should go along with Lionel at this moment, but my body reacted first. I nodded and said, "I'm very happy." Lionel took a deep breath behind me, then grabbed the back of my neck, forcing me to turn around. "I'll give you another chance to talk properly." I'm happy. This was probably the first time I defied Lionel Benny. I'm happy being with Artie Henderson. Lionel's gaze lowered, following mine, until he saw my swollen lips. Has he kissed you? Lionel's eyes seemed to be filled with endless anger. His voice was hoarse, and his hand holding my chin tightened. What else have you done with him? I looked at Lionel, who was on the verge of losing control due to jealousy, and felt puzzled. I met his gaze with determination and asked, "What does it have to do with you?" "What does it have to do with me?" Lionel suddenly laughed. "You've been chasing after me all this time, you've been saying that you'll always be by my side, and now you ask me, what does it have to do with me? Ella, you really have your ways." He straightened up, took a step back, and for once, this usually rebellious person lowered his head, as if compromising. "I admit, I have fallen in love with you." He held my face in his hands, as if helpless, but also compromising. "Leave Artie Henderson and come back to me." He lowered his head to kiss me. Let's pretend that none of this ever happened. After being entangled with Lionel for so long, the number of kisses was few. Most of the time, I was the one trying to please him. But I have caught him kissing someone else before. It was very different from our shallow kisses. He held the girl tightly, as if he wanted to devour her. I only glanced at it unintentionally, and the scorching air almost burned me. Harry and the others were right there, without any discomfort, as if they were already used to it. I regained my senses, lifted my hand, and pushed away the kiss he was about to plant on me. "Lionel Benny," I stepped back, my voice colder than ever. "I refuse." Lionel went crazy and almost turned our yard upside down. When the Benny family came to pick him up, they showed a rare expression of apology. My stepmother stood on the stairs, looking extremely pleased with herself. "I didn't expect you to be quite capable." The next morning, Artie was already waiting for me at the door. As soon as I stepped out, he looked at me with concern for a long time. "Is he crazy? Did he hurt you?" Seeing me shake my head, Artie breathed a sigh of relief. I thought that encountering Lionel again would be a scene of bloodshed, but to my surprise, he just glanced at me briefly and walked straight past. Everyone was dumbfounded by the rift between Lionel Benny and Artie Henderson, which turned out to be because of someone as ordinary as me. The college's online forum was flooded with discussions about this matter, and even news of the cancelled engagement banquet was dug up. In the photos, I was kneeling in the yard, drenched and miserable. And by my side, the tall figure of Artie sheltered me from the wind and rain. I've always said that Artie Henderson looks at Ella Weber differently, but no one believed me. "I believe you." Last year during PE class, Ella fainted, and Artie carried her to the infirmary, feeding her medicine and wiping her sweat. He stayed there until Lionel Benny arrived. I remember that too. At the time, I even joked with my best friend that Artie's back as he left alone looked like a deserted wife. I had no recollection of these things they mentioned on the forum, but I did faint during PE class last year. Vaguely, I remembered someone gently wiping the sweat off me while I was unconscious. And when I woke up, Lionel Benny was sitting beside me with a dark expression on his face. Without giving me a chance to speak, Lionel immediately launched into a barrage of accusations. "You're not feeling well, yet you insist on running. Are you unhappy unless you cause trouble?" I was used to Lionel's foul mouth, so I wasn't angry, but rather grateful. "Lionel Benny, thank you." Unexpectedly, as soon as I finished speaking, Lionel exploded like a balloon. He kicked over a stool and stormed off in a huff. It turned out that at that time, Lionel was not just frustrated but genuinely angry, so for the next half-month, he completely ignored me. My phone rang at this moment, pulling me back from my long reminiscence. Artie's hoarse voice was especially alluring in the dark night. "What are you doing?" Unconsciously, I fiddled with my fingers and replied, "I'm reading the forum." He chuckled lightly and asked, "Is it interesting?" I made a sound of agreement and then asked, "Did you take me to the infirmary last year?" Without any hesitation, he replied, "Yes." I thought it was Lionel. I squeezed the phone, feeling somewhat apologetic. "I haven't properly thanked you yet." "It's okay," he said. "You've already given me a better gift than thanks." I was puzzled and asked, "What is it?" Artie leaned closer to the phone and lowered his voice. "I can call you whenever I miss you. That's the best gift." Such seductive words, as if Artie was right beside me at this moment. He said, "Just the thought of seeing you again tomorrow makes me incredibly happy. Ella Weber, I miss you again." The tender words were filled with a man's passionate love, like a heavy rain that moistened my parched heart. After hanging up the phone, I was about to close the forum when a shining comment suddenly appeared. "When we first entered college, didn't the school auditorium collapse once?" At that time, Artie shielded Ella from the falling wood and took half a year to recover. And in the next second, all the posts about Artie Henderson disappeared. I sat motionless in place, and the post in front of me turned into a blank screen. When I first entered college, the school auditorium did collapse once. Unfortunately, I was on stage at the time. The accident happened in an instant. First, the chandelier above the stage suddenly fell, and then the pillars collapsed. Amidst the chaos, a tall figure embraced me, holding me tightly and pressing me against the corner of the wall, using his body to shield me. Dust filled the air, and when I tried to look back, my view was blocked by a hand. "Don't be afraid." The screams and commotion around me were muted, and in that confined space, I faintly smelled a hint of fresh grass. His arm leaned against my ear, the veins on his arm bulging, as if enduring great pain. That's all I remember about that day. When I regained consciousness, I was already in the hospital. I tried to find that person, but it was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Until one day, I caught a familiar scent on Lionel Benny. Lionel held a basketball and raised an eyebrow at me. "Young Junior, why are you staring at me in a daze?" I took a step forward, reaching out to tug at his clothes, my heart pounding. "I'm Ella Weber, what's your name?" The people around suddenly burst into laughter, and Lionel stood against the light for a while before reaching out to rub my forehead. "I'm Lionel Benny." After that incident, I did inquire about Lionel's whereabouts. Classmates said that Lionel was also present when the auditorium collapsed, and he was also injured. So when my dad suggested that I befriend Lionel, I agreed willingly. I suppose Lionel had never encountered a girl with my personality before. From initially being at a loss to later teasing me relentlessly, it only took half a year. Half a year later, Artie Henderson returned. It was a gloomy afternoon, and Lionel found the classroom stuffy, so he went to the small pavilion on the rooftop to hide. He was absent for 3 consecutive classes, so the university teacher asked me to persuade him. When I reached the rooftop, I discovered that Lionel wasn't the only one in the pavilion. I walked softly, and they didn't notice my arrival. Lionel, as usual, was leaning against the wall with his eyes closed. It's rare to see Artie, who doesn't care about women, have a crush. At that time, Artie Henderson wasn't as cold and aloof as he would later become. He looked into the distance and quietly responded, "She's great." Although I realized it wasn't a good time to disturb them, I still greeted them. When Artie turned around, he was clearly startled. He stood up nervously, unable to speak coherently. What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Lionel, who was behind me, opened his eyes. Artie, she's here to find me. Artie had a momentary look of confusion in his eyes. He stared at me, murmuring in disbelief. What? After Lionel had enough, he picked up his backpack and stood up, patting Artie's shoulder with a helpless expression. This is the clingy band-aid that I told you about. After saying that, Lionel walked up to me. Are you here to remind me to go back to class again? I nodded, and Lionel's lips curled up, clearly in a good mood. His rough palm rubbed the top of my head, and he said, "Let's go." I turned around and followed Lionel, but as we descended the stairs, I glanced back at Artie. He stood there in the rain, his forehead drenched. Perhaps because of the cold, there was a hint of vivid red at the corners of his eyes. He looked really handsome. That was my first thought. I couldn't sleep. That sentence from the forum kept replaying in my mind. The one who saved me wasn't Lionel, but Artie Henderson. Artie had liked me for a long time. That's why he spoke up when Lionel was neglecting me. But back then, I had already been bullied by Harry and his gang for a long time, so I instinctively thought that Artie must also dislike me. Facing my avoidance and fear, Artie was probably also feeling sad. During every sleepless night, was he tormenting himself like I was? It feels like Artie and I have missed out on so much. After a night of restless thoughts, I woke up the next morning with a low fever. Artie had something to do today, so only his driver was waiting for me at the door. I went through my classes in a daze, and in the afternoon, my dad called me and told me to come home quickly. I thought something big had happened, but when I got home, I found my dad dressed up and waiting for me. Mr. Benny is celebrating his birthday today. Come with me to pay a visit. I hesitated and said, I don't feel very well. But my dad ignored my words, and I had no choice but to change into the clothes he had prepared for me. By the time I arrived at the banquet, it was already evening. After entering, my dad disappeared and I found an inconspicuous corner to sit in, trying to minimize my presence. A few pretty girls came over and chatted with me. I struggled to deal with them, and it was only after they left that I realized my phone was missing. It was at that moment that Lionel appeared. He was wearing a white suit, and his usually flamboyant hair now softly fell over his forehead. I'm sorry about last night, he said, handing me a glass of wine with a face full of apology. I just had too much to drink. He seemed genuinely relieved, and the arrogance was gone from his eyes. I nodded, but didn't take the glass of wine. I'm sorry, but I don't really want to drink. Lionel's brows furrowed, and it looked like he was about to get angry, but he forcefully suppressed it. Ella, you're still angry with me, he said, holding the glass of wine in his hand, motionless in the air. People around us were already casting curious glances. In the end, I couldn't resist the pressure and took the glass of wine. A faint smile appeared on Lionel's lips, and he gently clinked glasses with me. I took a sip, but before I could put it down, Lionel held my neck and the bottom of the glass, pouring the wine into my mouth again. The strong drink hit me, causing me to cough uncontrollably. Lionel stayed still, sitting quietly beside me, watching me. Feeling uncomfortable under his gaze, I tried to get up and leave, but before I could, dizziness overcame me. Lionel pulled me into his arms and smiled apologetically at the people around us. She's had a bit too much to drink. I'll take her downstairs to sober up. I was conscious, and I knew I should refuse and ask for help, but my body wouldn't listen. It let Lionel do as he pleased. There seemed to be a fire deep inside me, raging and craving Lionel's touch. You have to behave, Lionel's fingers gently brushed against my face. I wanted to treat you well, but you always make me angry, so I have no choice. He supported me as we walked towards the second floor. Perhaps feeling that it was too slow, he directly lifted me up horizontally. It wasn't until I heard the sound of the door locking that I vaguely realized we had already reached the room. Lionel Benny placed me on the bed, while he stood between my legs, looking down at me. Artie, I murmured, Artie, help me. Lionel's eyes darkened, and then his expression slowly cracked. I don't like you calling someone else's name on my bed. He bent down and pinched my cheeks. Instead of seeking him, you might as well plead with me. Who knows, if I soften my heart, I might be a bit gentler to you. Seeming confident of his victory, Lionel was not in a hurry. He leisurely unbuttoned his shirt and leaned down to kiss me. With the last shred of sanity, I rolled off the bed, but he grabbed my ankle. You used to enjoy when I kissed you, right? Why are you hiding now? He exerted force, and I was pulled back beside him. As if provoked by me, he dragged my ankle and headed towards the bathroom. I was terrified, frantically struggling and clawing at the ground, leaving long streaks of blood on the pristine floor. Lionel had gone mad. He looked at me struggling and forcibly pushed me into the bathtub. The scalding hot water engulfed me, intensifying the effects of the medicine. I was on the verge of collapsing. Suddenly, the image of Artie appeared before my eyes. He was wearing a black wool coat, holding an umbrella in the rain, and gazing at me with lowered eyes. I felt an intense pain on my tongue, and I struggled to resurface from the water. Lionel was kneeling in front of me, his head down, unfastening his belt. It seemed he hadn't expected me to still be conscious, and he froze for a moment. Seizing the opportunity, I grabbed the ashtray by the bathtub and forcefully struck Lionel's head. He let out a mournful cry and fell to the ground, blood gushing out from his head. I crawled out of the bathtub, accidentally stepping on Lionel as I left. Staggering, I rushed towards the entrance. Everything in front of me was blurry, and I faintly heard rustling sounds behind me. In a state of panic, I fumbled to open the door, not daring to look back to see if Lionel had regained consciousness. With a loud click, I forcefully pushed open the door. Bright light flooded in, but just then, someone grabbed hold of my ankle. Panicking, I turned around to look, only to see Lionel, covered in blood, gripping onto my ankle. A triumphant smile hung on his lips. "I've caught you." I struggled to kick him with my other foot, but Lionel effortlessly pulled me down. Lionel had completely lost his sanity this time. He pressed me down on the corridor, and large droplets of blood fell on my face. I screamed and thrashed madly, but it was futile, like an ant trying to shake a tree. "No one dares to come to the second floor, and no one will come to save you," Lionel said with a triumphant smile on his face. He had lost his previous patience and forcefully tore open my collar. "You are mine, and you will always be mine." He bent down and planted kiss after kiss on my face. "I love you, Ella, I really love you." But in the next second, someone kicked Lionel out. And in the next second, a large overcoat covered me, and Artie's voice appeared above me. He said, "Don't be afraid, Ella." He tightly wrapped me in his clothes, then let go of my hand and went towards Lionel. Behind me were two burly men in black suits. The corridor was crowded with people craning their necks to see. Artie refused the bodyguard's suggestion to take action. He grabbed Lionel by the collar and clenched his fist. The sound of flesh hitting flesh was clearly audible even through the coat, and Artie's fist was covered in blood but still didn't stop. He kept punching Lionel until he was motionless. After dealing with Lionel, he strode over to me, wiped his blood-stained hands with a handkerchief, and then picked me up. The oversized woolen coat enveloped me completely, and Artie looked coldly at Lionel lying unconscious in the corridor. "I want an explanation for this." Only then did the people from the Benny family dare to approach. They respectfully agreed and then had someone take Lionel Benny away. Even after getting in the car, Artie's body was still trembling. He took me out from the coat, his eyes slightly red, and showered me with gentle kisses as if to confirm that I was really by his side. He cupped my face with both hands, carefully examining if I was injured. His gaze finally fell on my tongue, and he anxiously asked, "What happened to your tongue?" My consciousness was hazy, and I felt the fire in my body burning stronger and stronger. I leaned on his shoulder and whispered, "He drugged me." A curse word burst out of Artie's mouth, and just as he saw me about to bite my tongue again, he kissed my lips. The taste of rust spread between our intertwined lips and teeth, and Artie's eyes were filled with a dazed expression. He looked at me as if he wanted to capture my entire being in his eyes. "Baby, don't bite yourself," he said. His firm chest pressed against mine, and he brought his neck close to my mouth. "If you really can't help it, you can bite me." Artie swiftly took me back to his home. I thought he would personally detoxify me, but as soon as we entered the door, I saw a doctor waiting in a white coat. It wasn't until the soothing medicine was administered through an IV drip that the restlessness in my body gradually subsided. He sat by my side. The wound on his neck that I had bitten was bleeding, but he ignored the doctor's suggestion to bandage it and held my hand tightly. "Have a nice dream, everything will be fine when you wake up." The Henderson family has always handled things cleanly, as if nothing had happened that day. Lionel Benny was sent abroad, and according to Artie, he would never come back again. The wedding between Artie and I was also put on the agenda. My father changed his previous attitude and almost wanted to pamper me. My father relied on his relationship with the Henderson family to gain many benefits, but I was afraid that he would drag Artie down. When I told Artie about this, he gently kissed my forehead. The things he took from the Henderson family are only a negligible part to us. You don't need to worry about anything. Just focus on being my bride. We shared a long kiss, and after the kiss, I asked him, "Was it you who saved me in the auditorium that year?" Artie's eyes were misty as he nodded at me. I leaned against his chest and whispered, "I'm sorry, I always thought it was Lionel Benny." I was seriously injured at that time, and the Henderson family kept the news sealed. His big hand gently stroked my hair, and there was a hint of regret in his voice. When I was recovering, I was thinking about how to talk to you when I came back. We both understood what happened next. I mistook Lionel Benny as a ray of light to chase after, and he thought I had fallen in love with Lionel Benny and could only silently feel down. But fortunately, even though things went off track, they eventually returned to the right path. On the day of our wedding, I received an email from overseas. I almost immediately pressed the delete key. The young man's love may be mixed with arrogance and stubbornness, but it should not be a reason for him to harm others recklessly. Then, a text message came through, from an unfamiliar number but with a familiar tone. "Don't dream, Ella Weber. How could someone like Artie Henderson fall in love with someone as ordinary as you?" I blocked the number, but deep down, I also wanted to ask Artie when he actually fell in love with me. Until one day, I saw a photo he kept in his wallet. It was a photo of me winning a physics competition in college, which the college had posted on the bulletin board. Artie carefully peeled it off and put it in his wallet as a treasure. The two of us stumbled and went through many detours, but in the end, we still found each other. At the wedding, when we exchanged rings, Artie kissed me passionately. He said, "Fortunately, I waited for you." I cherished his love completely. What he didn't know was that I was also very grateful. Grateful that he was the one.